Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search builds great teams by connecting lawyers in Texas with career opportunities at small and boutique law firms. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel here back with you on Lone Star Lawyers. I hope you and your family are both healthy and safe. Before we get started, I want to let you know about a few of the positions we are currently searching for. We really have things available all over the state in a variety of practice areas. So chances are, if you're looking to make a move somewhere, we probably have something that's close to what you're looking for. But in Dallas, we are looking for both corporate and litigation. In Houston, we're looking for estate planning, and then, quietly, big law, corporate, finance. We typically just do small firm and boutique firm here, but there is a big law corporate finance opportunity. And if someone wants to make a switch to another big firm, then that's something we could talk about as well. In Austin, we've got a family law and an estate planning lawyer opportunity. And then in San Antonio, insurance coverage and commercial litigation. Like I said, that's just a few. There are others all over the state, lots of things happening. So please get in touch with me or either by email or on LinkedIn, or however you want to do that, to schedule a time to visit about some of these opportunities. You can reach me, Daniel, at varsitysearch.com. All right, today we are in Dallas, where our guest is Alex Bell. Alex is a senior attorney with MacDonald Devin, where he has extensive experience handling large loss and catastrophic cases involving multiple fatalities, serious injuries from construction, dram shop, transportation, oil field, industrial incidents. Alex also has an active docket of hospitality and entertainment related cases representing national restaurant groups and live entertainment venues, athletic venues, and other industry clients. He also represents architects and engineers in professional liability cases as well. He got his start trying cases right here in McLennan County's district attorney's office before moving to the civil side a number of years ago. And he has twice been appointed to serve on the State Bar Committee on administration of the rules of evidence. All right, with that, let's hop into our conversation with Alex Bell on today's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Alex Bell joins us right now. Alex, thanks for taking the time to come on the show.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting. I'm looking forward to talking with you. And as we get started here, why don't you share with us a little bit about what your firm does and then what you do within your practice?
Sure. So I'm at MacDonald Devin here in Dallas. I'm a senior attorney. And so, we're a general full service defense firm. The group I am in particular, focuses its practice on defending architects and engineers and working on construction projects. And so we try to be full service for all of our clients in that area, whether it's, litigation work, defending claims, professional liability work, or helping them with their contracts or acquisitions, things like that. We just try to make sure we can handle whatever they need.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, and tell me a little about how you got into that.
Sure. So I started my career in the DA's office there in Waco. So yeah. I started getting some trial experience right out of school, which is what I wanted. So I graduated in 2009, which was not a great time to be looking for a job. That was right. That was the bottom end of the economy. It was particularly hard on lawyers because you had all of these kind of mortgage or kind of housing or investment related jobs that just disappeared. And so all of a sudden there are all these kind of 2 to 7 year associates available. So it really hurt kind of like out of law school recruiting. But, thankfully what I wanted to do, I was still able to do. I wanted to go into the courtroom, get experience right away, and was able to stay in Waco and do that for about 5 years. So, after that, go ahead. Yeah. So after that, I always knew I wanted to kind of like get home, which is Dallas for me. And right. So, I had some connections up here, and, I hooked on with a firm in Dallas called Fletcher Farley, and a lot of them are former DAs. They do civil defense work. And so they understood that those skills are highly transferable. So you just have to find somebody that understands that, that courtroom experience, that litigation experience transfers over. And, you just make sure you get your O'Connors out and you remember all your civil rules,
all the civil stuff.
And you get right back into, doing civil litigation. There's a little more, there's more discovery, there's depositions and things, but it was an easy transition.
Yeah. Well, and, I'm trying to remember if we've had someone on that went the route that you did, meaning from the criminal side at first and then transitioning to the civil side. And no one's coming to mind. Derek Hollingsworth spent some time in the DA's office being civil and kind of gone back and forth a little bit. But that's the closest I can think of. But I'm curious, for those maybe that are, trying to figure out, maybe they're in their first few years of practice, and maybe they're in a DA's office right now, or maybe they're in civil and not getting much of that courtroom experience, thinking, should I go into a DA's office for a couple of years and then get that experience like you did and then come back over to the civil side? Kind of how would you maybe counsel someone through that, or kind of think through what would make the most sense for people?
Sure. Everyone's in a different situation. Some people want to try to jump right into a civil job and learn there and, help pay their loans back and things like that. If jumping into kind of like a civil service job, you got to want to do it. The pay is not as competitive as it is for, if you were going right out of school, working at a firm. But the hours are a little bit better. You've got, definite holidays and paid time off and things. So there's some trade-offs, but what it gives you is the experience of kind of like living out of a courtroom for the first part of your career. It's one of very few places where you're given a lot of responsibility right away. I was trying cases within 2 weeks of being there. And then, you have plea day and, you're in there doing docket call for criminal cases. So you're in the courtroom, you're in front of the judge all the time. In a small county like Waco, you're usually in front of the same judge or judges on a regular basis. So you get to know them, you get to, you kind of learn how the bar works, how you interact with, your opposing counsel and things like that. And, you realize very quickly you run into the same people all the time. So, it helps you develop those relationships and kind of pick up a lot of those soft skills about handling cases that, I have a lot of friends who started off in civil litigation who've had some trial or hearing experience, but nothing compared to like living it every day like you do in criminal law.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so, it's got to have just given you a really great foundation once you got back over the civil side and what you're doing now. Tell us a little bit more about within your practice area, and especially your group. You're talking about representing architects, engineers, and in that world, what has been on the top of mind of your clients these days? What are some of the hot button or hot topic issues that are facing them and that you're dealing with on a regular basis right now?
Sure. So a lot of the construction world and, architects and engineers tied tightly into that have experienced kind of some COVID related slowdowns. I mean, it's not like a recession level slowdown. It's just there's not as many projects in the pipeline as there have been in the last few years because of some uncertainty surrounding COVID. And for some of the projects that are still currently under construction, you've had some slowdowns in things due to, COVID safety protocols and limitations on how many people you can have in a certain area, even down to how many people you can have in the cab of the same equipment in 24 hours. So they're wrestling with, and we're counseling people through, okay, if the project is slowed down, how do we deal with project delays? Who's going to be responsible at the end of the day for the economic impact of those things on a project? And so, mostly that's contract interpretation and advising them kind of on those relationships and, what we think the potential outcomes would be. In an ideal world, everyone sits down and works all of those things out as they happen instead of having to resolve it in a lawsuit at the end of the project. But, sometimes that doesn't happen. So we end up in court and we end up litigating those things for them. So those are some of the key things we've seen in the last year and a half.
Yeah. And then, and it was just before we hopped on actually that I caught it. So I didn't have a chance to read the whole thing, but you had, I think just recently put on or I saw it recently. I don't know when you put it on, but on LinkedIn about the vaccination issue with some of the employees and workers in the construction field. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So that's a big question that's on a lot of employers' minds is, should I or should I not require, my employees as a condition of their employment, get vaccinated? There are ways to go about doing that. You have to make sure you're careful about crafting your policy. You've got to leave exceptions for people that have religious objections or, their doctor has counseled them not to for various reasons. There's HIPAA considerations. But at the end of the day, on something like a construction site where you have lots of people interacting, what you're concerned about is, the spread of the virus in those areas. As we start to return to kind of a semblance of normalcy, you want to try to remove some of those things that slow the project down, right? There are some times when you're in an enclosed space and you need to be able to work with several people in close proximity to each other to kind of do a job efficiently or effectively, or to do it in a cost-effective way. And so the question is going to be, if you have a lot of people who are deciding for whatever reason not to get the vaccine, how are you going to balance, their health and safety with kind of the old standards, right? The way that work is typically done. So it's just going to require some careful balancing. I don't know that anybody knows with a crystal ball exactly how we're going to slowly kind of unwind all of these protections we've put in place over time and at what vaccination levels, but it's certainly on everyone's mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here at Varsity Search, we made a policy that you have to be vaccinated to come to work. And so I, being the lone employee, abided by that policy, and I'm getting my second dose tomorrow. So I'll be allowed back in after that, I guess.
Yeah, excellent. No, I got my second dose on Monday, and I felt a little achy for a day or two, but I'm back to normal right now. So, I've gotten it. My wife's gotten it. We're expecting our third kid in August. So her doctor,
that's exciting.
Thanks. Yeah. No, her doctor advised her to go ahead and do it. And so we're both 100% vaccinated now. And, we've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and who knows what they'll decide as far as giving it to kids that young. I think they're still kind of figuring out how to do those studies and when and if they need to be vaccinated. But, we'll just like anything else, we'll help do whatever we can to keep them healthy too.
Yeah, absolutely. And and on COVID, I always like to mention here that the date we're recording on April 7th, just because when people listen months later, sometimes the context changes in terms of where we are in it. What has it been like here in the last couple months as things have maybe started to kind of loosen up or lift up around the way you've been able to practice? You mentioned when we first hopped on, you're in the office, obviously, and what is kind of the practice looked like in handling COVID? Has it shifted since kind of the end of 2020 into 2021 as we've kind of started to move ahead here? What's it like?
Sure. I'd say just in the last month and a half, I've had 2 in-person depositions, which felt very strange. After having done it in a format like this for about a year, it was at the same time odd and both vaguely familiar to be around a table with a court reporter and a live person doing a deposition. We still have cases where people want to do things via Zoom, which we're all still set up for. And there are a number of courts that are still doing, exclusively Zoom hearings and things like that. But we're starting to have some hope that jury trials are on their way back. We have a couple of big cases where it's the writing's on the wall. They're not going to get resolved. They've got to get tried. And for the last year, what we've been telling people is there's just basically a full stop. They're litigating some cases, but they're trying to keep them to smaller cases. They're trying to limit the number of people that are going to have to be together in the courtroom, at least in the state courts in Texas. I think there's some kind of notable exceptions for some federal courts that have had big trials. Kind of during this time period. But, we've got some courts that are, I think Harris County just resumed jury trials or jury selection like last week or this week. And I think you'll start to see, at least through the summer, everyone kind of put together their plans and start putting out jury dates again for times when they're going to have trials. I'd expect there to be some hiccups there. You may have, 1 or 2 situations where you see some small outbreaks, maybe some people who weren't vaccinated or something like that. But I think, hopefully by the beginning of 2022, we'll be kind of rolling in a regular rhythm on jury trials. But I think most of this year will be courts figuring out kind of how to navigate this new environment, how to keep jurors, safe in the environment as we kind of move from full COVID restrictions to a world where hopefully most, if not, the vast majority of people are vaccinated, and how that works with the court system. We're just all going to have a whole heaping of patience and human kindness and understanding as we all figure those things out. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like, and obviously it involves multiple parties agreeing to this, but going forward, as you mentioned, doing a couple of in-person depositions recently, do you feel like moving forward that you're going to have a preference on maybe still doing some, whether it's long distance ones or maybe less important, participants, witnesses, whatever, depots by Zoom or by a remote format? Or would you feel like you're going to want to switch back to as many or all in person as you can once you get to the point where that's possible?
Sure. I think it's going to be a case by case basis. I love this format. And one of the reasons I like it is that it requires you to be very organized with your evidence electronically, which I think is helpful. One of the things I did not like about in-person depositions when, every once in a while you'll have someone bring an Elmo or some electronic presentation format, but typically it wasn't set up in a way where it was easy for everyone to see or talk or discuss the same exhibits at the same time. Mm-hmm. So what's nice about this format, kind of like we're doing today, is that we can both see each other. We can both, when someone puts a document up on the screen, there's no question what everyone's looking at and talking about. So I think there are a lot of kind of like added or beneficial layers to the remote deposition process that we should at least think about. Okay, how can we incorporate the benefits of those into the things we're going to do in person? Right.
Yeah.
But I think it gives us optionality, right? I think if you're going to take a 1 hour deposition, I don't think it makes sense to get on a plane anymore. Right. I think for everyone's time and for litigation efficiency, I think clients are going to demand that, why are you flying and staying overnight somewhere to go take a short deposition when, you can be in your office and turn it on and do it in an hour instead of burning those time and expenses on the planes. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to be an improvement for everyone, right? It's going to be a lifestyle improvement for attorneys as far as having to travel and be away from your families. It's going to be a cost effectiveness improvement for clients, for insurance carriers. So I think it's going to be a good change. Hopefully the courts stay on that train too.
Yeah. Hearings and yeah.
Yeah. How many times have young lawyers had to go to a 15-minute scheduling hearing in another city in Texas? And so you basically spend all day traveling to only spend 15 minutes in the courtroom at a very, very brief hearing. So,
yeah.
So I think it'll just be everyone dialing in. When are we going to use these things? When is it appropriate? When is it not? Kind of building some of those things into the court's regular practice rules and procedures, and kind of making some of this temporary stuff permanent.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I'm optimistic that we're going to hopefully embrace the best of what we've learned over the last year. And that'll be exciting. Be a new world. So looking forward to it. Switching gears a little bit, I want to ask you about just advice for lawyers and becoming the best versions of themselves that they can as associates in these early years of practicing. What's something that you learned early on that's helped you and has stuck with you through the years that you've been an attorney?
Sure. One of the biggest things that kind of one of my mentors stressed to me when I was learning how to do civil cases is that you've got to understand how whatever task you've been given or whatever task you're performing fits into the bigger picture, right? Like, so you've got a lawsuit or you've got a claim or a dispute that's you're trying to help a client resolve. How does what you're doing today, whether it be discovery or a deposition or, kind of an initial case evaluation, where does this fit along the spectrum of the things that we're going to want to do eventually in this lawsuit? And so a lot of that involves kind of looking backwards. Like if you're in a deposition, what you want to think about is, okay, how are the questions I'm asking gonna fit with what we want to prove at trial? What do they need to prove? What do we need to prove? And how do I get those things from this witness in this deposition? So, seeing how all of that fits together is an important part of your growth in the legal community, and as a young lawyer, especially. Because one of the things you need to understand and be able to do eventually is, instead of being given discrete tasks, you need to know, okay, here's where we are in this case. Here's what needs to happen next. Here are the things we need to do next, so that you can then either run with it or direct other younger lawyers underneath you to help you with particular tasks in a case. But all of that comes from a very robust understanding of how everything you do fits together.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's something that, and I'm sure this varies in terms of the way that firms have their litigation teams structured and kind of the way that they share and communicate information, things like that. But do you feel like in most cases that involves that attorney kind of paying attention all along the way, being able to go back, like you said, looking back, looking forward, and kind of on their own be able to put that together? Or do you feel like that's really something that is going to need to be communicated directly from the senior associate, the partner, the others that are working on the case, in terms of how, is it, I'm trying to get for that person who's thinking about this, is that something I go and ask, how does this look, that question, how does this fit into the broader picture? Or is it something I'm doing on my own and kind of thinking it through, and all of that information is available to me? I just need to kind of read it all, synthesize it all, and I can understand it.
Sure. I think it's both.
Okay.
I think one of the best traits you can have, especially as a younger lawyer starting out, is just insatiable curiosity. Why are we drafting this motion? Why is it important to the case? What are we trying to accomplish? What message are we trying to send to the other side or to the judge by filing this motion, right? Everything you do in a case for a client has a purpose. Sometimes the purpose of filing a motion is not to win the motion. Sometimes the purpose of filing the motion is to, slowly make your way to the court about, what your theory of the case is, what the evidence is going to look like at the end of the day. Or you think you might know what the judge might do with the evidence at trial, but until you have her him make some kind of ruling on it, you really don't know. So you're trying to suss out some information about, what those rulings might be, or, how things might go at trial. So, yeah. But that's one of the things where, if you get an assignment to write a motion or do a research project, I would encourage you to ask, okay, what are you going to do with this? Like, is this for a motion? Is this for a brief? What are we trying to accomplish with this? And so that's, hopefully if they've got some time, they'll explain to you, what your task is fits into the bigger picture. And I think that helps you kind of slowly get that understanding. And sometimes you'll just ask if you can go, even if you can't bill for it, just to go watch the hearing, or go to a deposition, or just go see, kind of observe what an older or more experienced lawyer is doing. Some of the best experience you can get is, as a low level associate, sometimes you get sent to some depositions where, you may have 5 questions that you need to ask, but you should pay attention to, what the other lawyers in the room are asking, how they're asking it, and try to understand as much as you can. Okay, for them and their client, what is he trying to accomplish? How is he going about that? Right. Because that experience is invaluable. Getting to see how some of the more effective or some of the best litigators do those things in person, and trying to think through, okay, why is he doing this? What is he trying to show with this? And kind of, you pick up bits and pieces of that as you go along, and you incorporate that into the things that you do.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think super helpful. Is there anything that you've learned more recently that you wish someone had told you when you were in the first few years of practice?
One of the things that I'm always working on, I don't know that it's something I've picked up recently, but it's something I've kind of like reemphasized recently as we're kind of reliant now. Some judges are taking things under advisement, or I think it's put a greater emphasis on the briefing now, that it's important that your written work product be of the highest caliber, because that's what everybody sees of you and thinks of you before they've ever met you, right?
Yeah,
especially judges, and especially as a young lawyer. Their written work product is how you're making your first impression. So I know some of us get, if you get a redlined copy back from a partner or from somebody who's supervising you, you're kind of deflated by it or upset. Oh, it's just a typo. It's not a big deal. Well, it's how you are being perceived the very first time. So it's important to make a good first impression. It's important that your work be of a high caliber, that it look nice, that it make a good impression, because those are little things that people notice. And so at the end of the day, is it going to be the difference between your motion getting granted and not? Not necessarily, but as some other people have said, first impressions are important and reputations are important. And one of the ways that you can do yourself some favors is by making sure that your written work product, whether it's motions or briefs or letters to other lawyers, is making sure that those are of the highest quality you can make them.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so much to that. One of the things I was talking with a lawyer about this recently, just about, and this goes for in any walk of life really, but like, how if you're that person who is meticulous and does submit like the highest quality work all the time, when it comes time where you do make a mistake, because no one's perfect and you will, like, I feel like there's so much built up, credibility, and, capital, or if you will, like that, there's just more room. Like there's more room with your partner. There's more room with the judge, like for them to like, have grace for you in that scenario. Whereas if it's constant, and it's just, this is what you're always turning, like, I mean, there's just not that. And it's just kind of the, all the time. And similarly, if you're not learning from, whatever mistake you tend to make or something like that, you're not getting better and improving. I mean, that's another place where it struggles. So I think it's super important. And I feel like that's, I mean, like I said, it's kind of any walk of life, but like, I mean, you're building more, a buffer around you, the more that you do things well and right at the beginning, for when you do have that slip up. And there's, right.
Absolutely. And it's important, how you address those, how you go about fixing them is important. If you've messed up or you've misstated something, just say it. Your credibility in this job is so important. And things like high quality work product, things like being very prepared for hearings, giving some thought to how judges prepare and how to make their process easy for them. We've had a case recently where the judge likes getting notebooks in advance of hearings, because she'll sit down, she told us she'll sit down over the weekend and she'll read through everything and she'll make notes, and she's very prepared. So we make sure that, she gets, well thought out notebooks with an index and cover letters, and so that we make her job in reviewing the information as easy as possible. And I think what that does is, when they have to make a hard call, right? When the facts are close or the law is close, they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt if they trust you and they know that your work product's impeccable, right? Because they're going to trust your analysis and they're going to trust what you're telling them more than somebody who may not do some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes we forget that these are human beings in these jobs. Like, yes, they're human beings. Like, and that all plays into it. It just does. So I think that's really good. What are your thoughts on when and how young lawyers should begin thinking about developing business development, thinking about their own client base or whatever? I know it's a little different in each type of firm depending on who your clients are, and that certainly matters. But kind of broadly, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. My very first one is, the reality is you're doing it all the time, whether you think you're doing it or not, because
stuff there. Yeah.
Because client development and trust and, business development is relationships. So that can be, I've had people send me cases who have been opposing counsel on cases that just thought I did a good job, or that I'm in the area where somebody they know needs, Business comes from everywhere. It comes from your legal colleagues. It comes from people you've met on cases who they're not necessarily your client at the time, but they have the chance to see and observe your work. They may get to see some of your legal work product through, being shared with their lawyer, or, for example, if you do any insurance defense work, the relationships that you start building with insurance adjusters, when you meet them, they may be the low level person on the totem pole wherever they are. But, if they stick with it and make a career out of it, they can very quickly rise up and be managers or be people that are in a position to start giving you work. And the same thing with, people you went to law school with, right? Like they end up in-house different places, or they end up as general counsel, and they're in a position to where, if you've kind of staked out a subject matter area, or you're an expert in a certain field, to where, there are people that can start giving you work. And so that's why it's important that you interact with everybody in a way in which they come away with a positive impression, or at least they respect you professionally, right? Like you can have, right. If you're adverse to somebody on a case, they may not like the result, but, right. But they could also not like the result and respect the way you went about it.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that idea though of you're doing it all the time and you're doing it from the very beginning, just in the way that you're building those relationships, I think it is great stuff. So thanks for that. When you're going about the process of looking at hiring folks, and on the lateral market, looking at resumes, doing interviews, what are some of the key things that you're looking for that as candidates, lawyers ought to be thinking about? And I guess starting maybe to keep it segmented out, starting with on their documents that you'll see first. So whether it's resumes, writing samples, cover letters, what are some of the things that you're keeping an eye out on and looking for?
So one of the things I like to look for are, kind of relevant work experience. Some people kind of gloss over the kind of what I was doing in what I do in my current job, or what I've done in my last job section. But, I look for active verbs, right? Like briefed cases, attended hearings, attended expert and fact witness depositions, because those are the things I want to know. Like how much experience do you have doing some of the things that we're going to need you to do in the position that we have open? And the best way to communicate that, other than an interview, is to make sure that you've got that relevant experience kind of like listed out underneath, typically it's done in like bullets underneath, your, the job title and position and, duration for all of those things. And not necessarily something I look for that's a disqualifier, but, people who tend to stay somewhere for a longer period of time. If there's a gap, or if there's like a short duration at one particular place, it's usually something I'm going to ask about. Just because, look, we've all run into people in life where they're very talented. They're good at what they do, but it's just not a good fit. And so sometimes that's the case. And I don't begrudge anybody recognizing that there's not a good fit or figuring that out. But it's just, if I were them, I'd expect a question on something like that.
Yep. Absolutely.
But it's mostly looking for if they can communicate the skills that they have rather than necessarily the area they've been practicing in. Because a lot of times, especially for litigators, this is true. There's lots of transferable skills between subject matter areas, right?
Right.
The advocacy skills, the reading and writing and researching skills can all be applied to several different subject matter area experts. Coming from the guy who's done both criminal and civil law, I can tell you from experience that there's a lot of transferable skills. So I would think about the way you communicate those skills. If you're looking at something that's not like a direct subject matter change job, right? Like if you're going to go from doing the same thing to doing the same thing, like kind of like a true lateral. And instead you're looking at maybe doing something that's slightly out of the subject matter you were before, just so that it's easy to tell from the resume, like, okay, this person has the skills we're looking for. Like they can learn the subject matter area, but they've got the skills we need for this job.
Do you like to see, or is it helpful to see like quantities on resumes? And when I say that, I mean like, because some people, if they're, they've been practicing for a few years, they may have done 2 depositions. They may have done 50. They may have done 50 all fact witnesses. They may have done no expert witnesses, or sometimes it's 20 expert witnesses. I mean, so the numbers can matter in terms of in a couple of years how much experience they actually have versus like deposed witnesses. Blah, blah, blah. That's the bullet, right? And where there's no context around that. Is that helpful? Like, do you, when you see numbers or like dozens or, whatever, things like that might qualify it in terms of how many they've done, is that helpful? Do you like seeing stuff like that?
I think it's helpful for two reasons. It's helpful to know in particular what they've done, like you said, but it's also helpful to me because I think it's good advocacy, right? They're being good advocates. They're being good advocates for themselves, right? Because if there's one thing that I'm the most experienced person in the world, and then it's, well, yes, but like how many of these things, what does that mean? Like, what have you actually done? Like, what's the follow-up question to that, right? Like, how many of these? And it also shows me that you've given some thought to, it's important to track those things or keep track of your experience in that area, either for this reason or for some other reason. You know, maybe you want to get a specialty certification. I was board certified in criminal appellate law when I left the DA's office. Not something I've been able to keep up, but you have to keep track of, you know, how many briefs you've written or how many appeals you've argued. You have to track all of that stuff. So it gives that. The numbers are good for a multifaceted set of reasons, just one of which is telling me the skills. It really tells me a whole lot more than that. Yeah.
Yeah. And everyone listening. But use accurate numbers. Oh my gosh.
Yes. Don't fudge.
Yeah. Don't make it up.
Err on the low side.
And on the low side.
And if you're approximating, just be clear that you're approximating and try to make it close, right?
Exactly.
This is not my high school football roster where I was 6 feet tall, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm really like 5'9.5", but we all round up for that. That's
right. The sneakers add 1.5 inches, but we're not counting that in our resume bullets. That's right. Yeah. That's hilarious. All right. Well, we're almost out of time. Is there anything we haven't talked about yet or haven't asked about yet that you would want to share before we do our rapid fire questions here?
Make sure that as you're going through your legal career, that you find something that you enjoy spending your time doing. You're not going to like every minute of every day of your job, but there's so many different facets to legal careers that sometimes I know people that have taken them 10 or 20 years to find kind of like their niche or the right spot. But if you're not happy doing what you're doing or where you're doing it, you know, just make sure that you keep looking. You try to diagnose kind of like, okay, what are the reasons? What are the things I like? What do I don't like? And talk to some people in some different fields about their experience and about, you know, some things you might like better about, you know, different kinds of legal jobs or different employers, and go for it.
Awesome. Yeah. Call a legal recruiter. I promise I didn't tell him to say that part right there. That was all him. That was all awesome. All right. Rapid fire questions to end our time. All right. Name one trait or characteristic that you most want to see in an associate.
Curiosity.
Oh, yeah. That's good. You said that earlier. What habit has been key to your success?
Consistency and organization.
Awesome. Your favorite legal app or software?
The TrialPad suite of software. So there's the trial app, and then there's Transcript Pad, which you can kind of edit and mark up depositions.
Cool. Awesome. All right. The new added favorite question in this, your favorite pen. What is the pen of choice for you?
All right. I wrote this down because I can only recognize them by the box.
You could show the video here. Since we're doing video. Yeah.
So.
There we go. The Precise V7. Oh, who just said that? Brandon Waddell. I think said the same.
Yeah, the Pilot Precision pens are far and away the best pens that you can get. And I keep my own supply. I keep them in a drawer because they're very important. They also, you have to be careful with them on planes, but other than that, they're great pens.
That is fantastic. All right. Your favorite social distancing activity. This question might get retired hopefully soon enough, but for now, we're still asking it.
I hope so too. When I was at home, we would do at least once a day, like kind of walks around the neighborhood. And it's just nice. Yeah. To kind of see your neighbors or spend that time outside with your kids, but just kind of get out and see the world that way.
Absolutely. And last, your favorite legal movie?
The Rainmaker.
Ah, good one. Yeah. I'm trying to think if anyone else has said it. But it's a great one. I actually watched it not too long ago. That's great.
It is. It has everything. It has drama. It has great courtroom scenes. It has deposition scenes, which you don't see very often.
It does. Plus, we just don't get much Danny DeVito anymore, and it's good to go back and see him in action.
And then Matt Damon.
And Matt at his early ages.
Yeah, before he was a megastar.
And that's right in the middle of the John Grisham heyday. So you just get all of it all packaged together. It's great. So check that out if you haven't seen it. So that's a good one to end on. All right, Alex, thanks so much again for taking the time to be with us. We appreciate it and wish you and your firm all the best.
All right. Thanks to you. Appreciate you having me on.
All right. My thanks again to Alex Bell for joining us on the show today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider doing 2 things for me? Would you subscribe so you don't miss an episode? And then would you please rate and review the podcast in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen? If you have suggestions or thoughts about the show, or if I could help you in any way, please email me, daniel@varsitysearch.com. Also, don't forget, if you're interested in any of those opportunities I mentioned at the top of the show, or just want to visit about what might be out there for you in the lateral market, please get in touch with me. Would be happy to visit. All right, that's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel Hare with Varsity Search, and we'll talk with you next time.